My friend, who is a software engineer in Bengaluru, earns 25 lakh rupees a year. He's looking to buy a 2 BHK apartment. He found one in Whitefield for 2 crore rupees. He does the math. That's 72 times his monthly salary. His EMI would be 1.4 lakh rupees for 30 years. More than half of his take-home pay would be gone. His father similarly bought a flat in 2003 in Bengaluru. Same city, same size. But that was just 18 times his monthly salary back then. So even though the son earns 4 times more than his father did, he ends up needing 4 times longer to be able to completely own the home. So is India's real estate overvalued? Or is it because we have less houses and more people? Well, it's not technically true because builders sit on unsold inventory also. So what's actually happening? Why does Indian real estate not follow expected conventions? Well, that's actually because it's designed to be like this. If you want to know what we are talking about, stick around because that's exactly what we're going to break down in this episode of FinShots TV. FinShots TV is now a part of Zerodha 01 network. Together, we plan on bringing you stories that impact your day-to-day lives, sometimes without you realizing it. So do consider liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and subscribing to our channel. Hey guys, if you like our work at FinShots, do consider checking out Ditto. Ditto is our sister company and they are trying to make insurance simpler for people like you and me. If you're thinking of reviewing your insurance needs, why don't you book a free call with Ditto Insurance's IRDAI certified advisors? The link is in the description. Let's start with the most basic question. Is India's real estate overvalued? The most common way to measure housing affordability is the price to income ratio. It tells you how many years of your annual household income you would need to buy a home. Globally, a ratio of 3 to 5 is considered to be affordable. Anything above that is considered to be slightly unaffordable. Now, let's look at India's numbers. According to a 2024 report by Knight Frank, Mumbai has a price to income ratio of 34. This means that an average household will have to work 34 years to be able to afford a home in the city. For Bangalore, it's 22, Delhi NCR, it's 20, and for Pune, it's 18. Compare this to global cities. In New York, this number is 9. London, it's 13. Singapore, it's 11. Even famously expensive real estate markets like Hong Kong, this number is 21. India's Tier 1 cities are among the most unaffordable in the world when it comes to real estate. Okay, that's one side of the equation. But does it mean if homes in India are more expensive, we also get to rent them at higher prices? Is the rental yield when it comes to Indian houses really high? Let me explain what that means. Rental yield is the annual rent you earn divided by the property price. It tells you what return you would get if you rent out your property. In healthy markets, rental yields are around 4 to 6%. It means buying property makes financial sense. What does this mean? Well, if you buy a 1 crore rupee flat in Bengaluru, you would earn about 22,000 per month in rent from that flat. That's 2.64 lakh rupees in a year. That's a 2.2% rental yield. Even FDs give you 7% interest. Why does this mismatch actually exist? Is it because we don't have enough houses? That's why the prices are high? Well, that's also not true. Builders sit on huge unsold inventory. So what's actually happening and who is buying at these sky-high prices? Well, it's not always your regular retail investor. Here are some major buyers when it comes to India's real estate. Number 1 is the non-resident Indian or NRI. NRIs account for around 15 to 20% of property purchases in metro cities. In areas like Whitefield of Bengaluru, Powai of Mumbai or Gurgaon in Delhi, this number can go even higher. So why do NRIs even buy properties in India? The thing is, they're earning in a foreign currency, sometimes dollars or pounds, which is stronger as compared to the Indian currency. They want a retirement home or an investment for their kids. And they don't actually care about rental yields because they're not buying for cash flow. They are just parking their wealth. Okay, that was number 1. You know what the number 2 reason here is? It's black money. India's real estate has historically been the easiest place to park unaccounted cash. Even after demonetization and stricter regulations, this practice has continued, just more creatively. Deals are structured with part payment in check and part in cash. Prices on paper are lower than the actual transaction value. This inflates the property prices because black money doesn't care about affordability. It just needs to be hidden away in safe places. And the third player in this story is the institutional buying of houses. Institutional investors like private equity firms or real estate funds are corporates that have been buying residential units in bulk, especially in premium and luxury segments. They hold them as long-term appreciating assets or lease them to corporates for employee housing. These buyers aren't emotional. They're not buying because they need a house. They're actually buying because the real estate in India has so far been a safe and high return asset class over a period of 15 to 20 years in terms of capital appreciation. But all of this leads to one outcome. Real home buyers, people like you and me who actually need a place to live, are competing with investors who don't care about affordability and have extremely deep pockets. So the middle class is priced out, not because there's a shortage of homes, but because there's a shortage of homes available for them. Now someone might say, fine, investors are buying, but what if the supply is high? Why don't prices actually go down? The whole process is slightly skewed against the middle class. Let's actually talk about land. India has one of the lowest urbanization rates in the world. Only 35% of Indians live in cities. But urban land is shockingly scarce because of the floor space index or the floor area ratio restrictions. This is FSI. We've actually talked about it in another video. Let me give you a little bit more depth into it here. FSI determines how much built-up area you can construct on a plot of land. In Mumbai, the average FSI is 1.3. That means in a 1000 square foot plot, you can only build 1330 square foot floor space. Compare that to Shanghai, where FSI is 8 to 10, or Singapore, where it goes up to 14. Even New York allows around 12 to 15 in dense areas. Low FSI artificially restricts supply. It keeps prices high because every square foot becomes more premium. Then there are approval delays. Getting approvals to build in India takes an average of 3 to 4 years, sometimes longer. You've probably heard all your real estate builders talk about this on podcasts. You need clearances from municipality bodies, fire department, environment agencies, pollution boards, and so many more agencies. Every delay adds holding costs for builders. They pass these costs on to the buyers. And here's the thing, land acquisition in itself is a mess. Much of urban and peri-urban land is tied up in legal disputes, unclaimed titles, or agricultural classifications that prevents conversion to residential use. So builders now have a convenient excuse. We'd love to build more affordable houses, but we can't get the land or the approvals for it. And the result is that the supply is choked, prices stay elevated, and the middle class has no options. Here's an angle you don't hear about, because none of this is actually accidental. The system is designed to keep real estate prices high, and everyone benefits of this except you. In India, state and municipal governments depend heavily on real estate for revenue. Stamp duty, property taxes, and development charges together contribute around 30 to 40% of municipal budgets in major cities. In Maharashtra, stamp duty is around 5 to 7% of property value. In Karnataka, it's 5%, and in Delhi, it's 6%. So if you buy a 1 crore flat, the government easily makes 5 to 7 lakhs upfront from it. Now, imagine if property prices fall 30%. Suddenly, the government's revenue also sees a drop. So, who would actually want that? Then, there's the banking system. In 2000, home loans were capped at 15 years. Today, bank offers 30-year tenures. Some even push to 35 years. And you know why? Because longer tenures means smaller EMIs and more people will qualify. This would mean that more loans would be disbursed. A 80 lakh loan at 8.5% interest for 20 years has an EMI of 70,000 rupees. Stretch that to 30 years and your EMI drops to around 60,000 rupees. The 10,000 rupee difference looks affordable, right? Except over 30 years, you pay 2.24 crore rupees for that 80 lakh loan. You pay nearly 3 times the principal amount in interest. Banks love this. Home loans are their safest, highest margin product. Default rates are low because people will starve before they default on their home loan. And when banks make home loans easier, they don't make home loans affordable. They just make unaffordable home loans financeable. That's a critical distinction. The installment fits your budget, but you're trapped for a longer period of time. Before liberalization, housing was seen as a social problem and the government was supposed to solve it. But after 1991, housing became a market commodity. Private builders took over, and real estate became an investment asset class. The middle class was told that you are on your own. Tax incentives were given under the Section 80C to make home loans more attractive. But they didn't make homes affordable. They just made borrowing more appealing. The government essentially outsourced housing to private players and gave them cheap credit and tax breaks and stepped back. This should have worked in an ideal world, but we all know that's not the case here. Private builders don't build for the middle class in India. They build for whoever pays the most. And that's usually investors, NRIs, or people with a lot of black money. So affordable housing has started disappearing in India. The 50 lakh to 80 lakh segment, the one that the middle class can actually afford, has started vanishing. Today, you either buy a 30 lakh flat under a government scheme in a far-flung suburb which has no infrastructure, or you stretch yourself and buy a 1.5 crore house in this city. The middle ground is gone. So technically, is India's real estate overvalued? Yes, by almost every global metric, price to income ratio, rental yield, affordability indices, India's property market is among the most expensive in the world. But does it mean it's about to crash? Probably not, because the system isn't designed to let it crash. Governments need the revenue, banks need the loan book, builders need the margin, and the wealthy need a place to park their money. So prices stay high, supply stays choked, and the middle class stays trapped. So what can you even do about it if you're planning to buy a house? Well, you should understand that you're not buying in a free market. You're buying in a rigged one. Keep your EMIs under 40% of your take-home income. Don't stretch for a bigger flat just because the bank approved the loan. And if renting makes more financial sense, rent. Invest the difference in assets that actually could grow over time. So what's your take on this? Let us know in the comments and subscribe to FinShots TV for more.